This is the installation instruction video for the Wi-Fi based or smartphone based Wi-Fi remote control for the Honda EU7000iS. First step will be to open up the box. You'll have some paperwork inside that says congratulations, you've purchased the greatest thing on earth. There'll be two red wires. One of them will have phase tape, white tape on it, so that you know which is which as you're doing the wiring. There'll be a flash drive with a copy of this video on it. It also has a piece of twisted stainless steel safety wire on it, and that safety wire is just a key to press the arm button. You can either use an ink pen or any small probe or this. There'll be a section of Velcro to mount the module on top of the generator. A bunch of zip ties to tidy up the area. Then the Wi-Fi module itself and an antenna for the Wi-Fi module. First step to installing it is to go ahead and remove the handlebars and the front cover. The handlebars are held on with a shoulder bolt. It's got a flat washer and a conical washer that simply keeps tension. And it's got one on either side. Then the front cover is held on with two acorn nuts at the bottom. And that's an acorn nut. And then two 6mm bolts at the top. These 6mm bolts have shoulders on them. And there's one of these on each side. Slide the cover off. There are two bottom studs, and sometimes just like this, the metal sleeve will get stuck on the stud. Put the metal sleeves in the cover. Make sure that the foam that goes in this groove is still in this groove. If it's not, this is a convenient time to go ahead and tuck it all back in. And then make sure this rubber sleeve, or this rubber gasket, is in the groove around the control panel. There are mount brackets for the handlebars, one on each side. There's a foam piece on each mount bracket that's just to dampen vibration. Pull the foam pieces off, set them aside. Then each mount bracket is held on with two nuts. You'll need a 12mm socket to remove the nuts. And be careful not to lose the star washers. There's a star washer behind each nut, and I'll show that to you once I get it off. these star washers are easy to lose. I don't know if you saw what I did. To pull it off, I put my fingers on the star washers and pull the whole thing off. That way I don't drop them on the floor. And incidentally, these mount brackets are a left and a right. They are stamped with a very, very small letter. But it's pretty simple. They mount on there in such a way that the nut goes between the bracket and the control box. I just dropped a nut. I'll pick that up later off camera. There are the two star washers, and this has a really tiny L on it. Then there are three 6mm nuts. One here, one down here, and one right here. And this one is covered with a plastic cover. The whole purpose of this plastic cover is to keep this wiring harness from getting rubbed through by the nut and the stud sticking out. I'm going to go ahead and remove the battery. Get that out of the way so it's not interfering with this. And we'll take off each of the three 6mm nuts. Incidentally, as in 6mm nuts, it uses a 10mm wrench, but the stud that the nut goes onto is a 6mm by 1.0 pitch. But the actual wrench is a 10mm. So now the control box is pulled out and you can get at it conveniently. Okay, the next step is we're going to remove this plug from the control box, and that's the remote control, or where the remote control plugs in. It has a dummy plug in here right now. Set this off to the side, save it as a troubleshooting tool and so forth later on. In fact, it might be a good idea to drill a small hole through it and just zip tie it to one of the battery wires so you've always got it in the generator. Okay. In order to remove the socket from the generator, we'll need a pair of needle nose pliers, and we'll simply squeeze in on these two tabs, and I will show you a better illustration of what I'm talking about when I get it out. You'll actually be able to see better. Okay. Put one of these nuts on temporarily just to hold it while we talk. Okay, here is the remote control socket, and you'll notice that there are two wings on it, and what you do is get in with a pair of needle nose pliers and squeeze those two wings in together so that it can be dropped out through the round hole that it was snapped into. right here. And of course it goes in with the tab up, so it snaps into a location on this. Next step is going to be to remove the fuse box or fuse holder. Use a small screwdriver or a pick probe and just push down on this little tab and it slides back. This tab right here, if you push down on it and slide it back, the fuse holder comes out. Then remove both the fuses from the fuse holder. Look at the back of the fuse holder and you'll notice that the 15 amp fuse went in here, the 3 amp fuse went in here. We're going to remove the wire and the conductor that went to the top of the 15 amp fuse. The way that's done is take either a terminal removal tool or a small screwdriver. If you look into the end of the holes without a terminal, you'll see that there's a small tab that you press this direction on. So for the top one, you'd press it this way and then pull the wire out the back. So that has our wire out of the back top of the 15 amp fuse. Then take the 2 wires that came in the kit. They're longer than you need them to be. The actual spacing from the remote plug to the fuse holder is only about 3 inches. Start with the one with the white phase tape on it. And I'm going to cut it to about 5 inches so that it can make a loop. Then we'll trim the end of the wire. And what we'll do is very carefully get some light on here so I can see. I don't know if that actually makes it harder to videotape it, but it makes it easier for me to see. We're going to bend this so that we can get at the back of the terminal. We'll feed this wire through this little hole and then we'll fold it back . So that everything will fit nicely when we tuck it back in. You'll notice one wire on one side, the other wire on the other side. So now what we'll do is we're going to solder this. Let me let the soldering gun heat up. There it goes. Okay. And that's held securely. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the other wire that we'll be working with, and that's going to be the bottom pin on the 3 amp fuse. here. Okay, this is cooled down enough to work with now. So what I'm going to do is take this and turn it and insert it back in the exact same way that it came out. I'm going to feed this wire under here so that it lays nice and clean. Okay, so now you can see that our 15 amp plug is back together. Now with our terminal for the 3 amp plug, we'll turn it so we can get at the back side of this hole. And we'll cut the red wire that does not have phase tape on it. Strip the insulation from the end of it. And very carefully attempt to get that into this one. We'll fold the ends of it back. Then I'll solder that in place. See if that's hot enough. And then we'll put this back in. Same location that it came out of. Okay, so now that you've got your wires soldered to the terminals, remember you have white phase tape on one of the wires and the other wire does not. We'll start with the wire with the white phase tape. You'll notice that there are 2 little tabs that stick up from the terminal, with those tabs pointing up. Look in here and you'll see that there are 2 rows of 4 pins, and the bottom row, second pin from the end, is where this is going to go. So we're just going to take it with the 2 tabs pointing up and slide it in the back. I don't know if you can see that clearly or not. And you'll hear an audible click. And now it's locked in. Then you'll take the red wire that had no phase tape on it, turn it to where the 2 tabs point straight up, and that goes in the very bottom row corner hole. And now you can see that although the 2 of them are 3 inches apart, and that's why I cut the wires to 5 inches to make a nice loop. So now we'll take the remote control socket, put it in the hole, and just press straight up, and it locks itself in place. The fuse holder will slide back, put it in these 2 slots, and pull forward, and it's now locked in place. That was actually the trickiest part of the job, was getting this soldered together. I'm going to go ahead and drill a small hole in this so that we can put a zip tie through it, and we're just going to zip tie it to the ground terminal of the battery, and that's simply to keep it located. now we've got a hole in the little rubber boot. Take one of the zip ties, pass it through this hole, and just zip tie it around the negative terminal of the battery so that it keeps it located in case you ever need it again. Okay, the next step is going to be taking the Velcro that's included in the kit, and you simply peel the back off to stick it into place. The soft part of the Velcro is stuck to the bottom of the piece already. You stick the stiff side of the Velcro to the top of the fuel pump cover. And this is where you will set the control unit. I'm going to temporarily remove the relay from the plug, only because it makes it a lot easier to feed the wiring harness into place. We'll go ahead and set our control unit box. Incidentally, this is a prototype decal. If the print company ever gets us the correct decals, they keep sending them the wrong size and so forth. The production version will not be a piece of tape or paper taped on there, but the labeling will be the same. Just wanted to get that cleared up. Okay. This is the main remote control plug, and it plugs in right to the front of the generator in the plug that we have now added the wires to. Looks like it's twisted. That looks a little better. We'll take another one of the zip ties. We're going to take the rest of the harness and we're going to zip tie it right to the metal frame here, so it doesn't get torn loose during the install process or at any other time actually. Okay, we'll take the nut that we put on temporarily here out of the way. This harness is going to go in here and in around under the factory Honda mother harness. So it's going to come in here, then it's going to curve around under Honda's mother harness, and we'll go ahead and pull it on through. Okay, now you can see the braided section coming through right here. We've got our braid running through, and this runs over in this direction now. I'm going to go ahead and do the economy mode first. You'll notice that there are two yellow wires. One has a male .187 spade and the other has a female 187 spade. Take one of the wires off the back of the economy mode switch, and it does not matter which one you take off because this is going to be wired in series. You'll plug the male yellow wire into the female spade connector that you just unplugged the switch from, or unplugged from the switch. Then you'll take the female 187 yellow wire and plug it onto the back of the switch where you removed the original wire from. Next thing I'm going to do is to hook up the AC voltmeter. The wireless remote control is set up, the standard set of it, or standard version of it, will turn one of the 120 volt, 20 amp GFCI outlets on and off. I'm going to be turning this outlet on and off, so I want to hook the voltmeter to this one because I want the voltmeter to display all the time, even if this outlet is shut off. And if you shut the outlet off, of course there's no AC voltage going to it, so it defeats the purpose of having a voltmeter. To install the AC voltmeter lines, it's straightforward and simple. You've got the power input coming to the two bottom terminals on the 20 amp outlet. There are two top terminals also. So you put one blue wire to each of the two top terminals. Simple, straightforward. And then we'll tighten down the screw as we do it. I'm using a double offset flat blade screwdriver. You notice one is 90 degrees to the shank and the other is in line to the shank, so I can rotate it a quarter of a turn and switch ends, rotate it a quarter of a turn, switch ends, and so forth. You can simply remove the outlet from the control panel by taking these two screws out. That may be easier for you. It'll definitely be easier if you don't have an offset screwdriver like this. But even if you do have the offset screwdriver, you may like to have just the extra room and be able to see clearly what you're doing. Now we'll loosen up this screw. And put the other blue wire on this side. Loosen that up just a little bit more. Okay, and now we'll tighten this screw down. Let me get some light on there so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now we have our AC voltmeter hooked up. The last thing is to hook up the two lead wires that will allow you to turn the outlet on and off. I disconnect the end from the circuit breaker first. You've got a blue wire that runs from the circuit breaker to the outlet. We'll disconnect the circuit breaker end. To do that, you squeeze the release tab, which is right here, and simply pull it off. This end, you loosen the screw that goes into the side of the outlet. and you tug the wire loose. You'll notice at one end is an open ring terminal, the other end is a spade connector. On my kit, you have two wires. One has a spade connector, the other has an open ring terminal. We'll connect the spade connector to the circuit breaker, the open ring terminal, where the open ring terminal came off of. And then we'll tighten this screw down. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the relay back into the relay socket. Now that we've got it in place, it was just plain easier to feed that wire through there without the relay causing any problems. And we'll turn the relay down where it'll rest out of the way there. And now I'm going to take some of our zip ties and tidy up the area just a little bit. Okay. Now just look around and make sure that nothing is out of place and you didn't pull any wires loose or anything like that. Now we're ready to go ahead and put this back up into place. And it will slide over the three 6mm studs and the four 8mm studs. I'm temporarily going to put one of the 8mm nuts on just to hold it in place while I do the rest of the work. The next step will be to put the nuts onto the three 6mm studs and go ahead and snug those down. Then here is the plastic cap that goes over this nut and stud. And just push that back into place. Then I'm going to take the battery and reinstall it. I'm going to put the positive terminal on. That way if I slip with a wrench and short it against the frame, the negative terminal is not connected yet, so it won't spark. we'll install the negative battery terminal. As I'm installing the battery, I'd like to point out that the Honda EU7000 has a very minimal battery charge circuit. I will be releasing a battery maintainer that will be available on my website that you can purchase separately, and it will allow the generator to charge the battery more quickly. Right now, if you were to deplete the battery down to the threshold of 11.75 volts, it would take about 8 hours of running for the generator to fully charge. That's because the battery charge coil in this is so small. I'm going to be releasing a battery maintainer that you can either plug in to one of the outlets and run off the generator, or plug into the wall of your house if you're using this as a standby. But at any rate, it should bring a 12 volt battery from 11.75 volts up to 13.85 volts in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. The next step will be to install the antenna, and that simply threads on to right here, and you fold it up. At this point, your install is done, and you could begin loading the software if you wish. I'm going to continue on with the cabinet and install that and do the software later. Let me take a moment to show you something inside the control box. Take the antenna out of the way. And incidentally, you can remove these screws. It does not violate my warranty or anything else like that. In fact, if you're taking advantage of the 4 accessory leads, you will need to hook them up. The antenna lead is threaded in here. So if when you screw the antenna on, it feels like the antenna lead may have backed out, if the antenna feels the least bit loose, you can take a flat nose pair of pliers and just snug it up. Don't crank down on it super hard. But that would do it. This felt just a little bit loose when I was screwing the antenna on. Oh, I just did it again. Reach in here. Grab that inner nut. The knurled portion at the end of the antenna does turn separately from the rest of the base. This part here. Let me show you real quickly. The first 4 relays are the 4 that I'm using all the time. This is the run relay, this is the start relay, this is the economy mode relay, this is the outlet control relay, and then right above my logo on the board starts accessory 1, accessory 2, accessory 3, and accessory 4. So now we'll go ahead and put the cover back on. And as I stated, you can go ahead and do the software right now if you choose, and that way if you need to change anything, you've got the cover off and you can load the software into your phone and do a test run before you put the rest of the cover back on if you'd like to. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the cover back together at this point. What we'll do is take the cover itself and we'll remove the battery cover or battery door. Then we'll take the mount tabs for the handlebars, which, as you remember, there's one left and one right. Since I've got my temporary nut on the right hand side one, I will install the left hand one first. There's the 2 star washers. Go ahead and put the fuses back in. Obviously the fuses would need to be back in before you could load software too. Actually, you could load the software, it just wouldn't work. Okay, just want to look things over and make sure that everything's in place. After you get the brackets tightened down, you'll want to put the foam inserts around them. You'll notice that there is a slot and there are 2 holes. The holes are not centered, so you'll position it to where the slot with the hole with the greatest distance from the end is facing up. Okay. Then Then we'll go ahead and put the lid on the bat or the fuse holder. Remove the keys just to make it slightly easier. Now what we're going to do is take the front, take one last look at the foam gasket, make sure that that's still in place, the rubber seal is still in place, and the two metal spacers are in place. Now that we've broken the Velcro free, carefully pass the antenna through the battery door. We'll set this gently up here. We'll push this into place. Be very careful to line the studs on the bottom up correctly. For some reason that seems to be the toughest part of it. Okay. We're going to put the two acorn nuts on the bottom loosely. We'll just thread them on just enough to where they've got some thread engagement so they don't pop off. And then we'll put the two shoulder bolts in place. They're a little bit trickier. What you'll have to do is squeeze real tight on the cover to get the hole to line up. And just turn it in a few turns and go over to the other side and do the same thing. Now you can go ahead and tighten down the two upper bolts. And once they're tightened down, come back and do the two acorn nuts. And now we'll go ahead and set this box to where the Velcro lines up evenly and gets a good bite on it. I'm going to take another one of the zip ties that's included in the kit and zip tie the main harness to the frame of the generator. Now we'll put the handlebars on. When you're putting the handlebars on, be careful not to pinch your little finger on the side latches. It's actually easy to do. The handlebars are held on with the two shoulder bolts again. So we'll put the shoulder bolts in and just put them in a few turns. Snug this one down and then go back and snug down the other side. Okay. The last step is to put the battery cover door back in place. The wiring harness for the remote control will pass through this little section. Honda has conveniently put an indentation in the cover that you would cut out. I do not have my hacksaw out here, but you get the idea. It's number one, it's covered in Honda's own owner's manual, and it's pretty straightforward and simple. You'd simply cut this area out, and then it will fit around the wiring harness, and the door will screw back in place. That should just about cover the installation of the mechanical portion. I'll have next video will be the software installation and tuning the software and setting all the settings of the software to take maximum advantage of the kit.